So, welcome back everyone to our episode. Today, we are bringing a truly global perspective to our channel. He is a senior lecturer and also a visiting professor who work across Europe, including Portugal, France, Slovenia, Poland. And at the moment, he is also a first team psychologist for Rugby Borough Women FC and also the head of academy advisor in Portugal. And at the moment, he's trying to bring his international experience and try to work as a sports psych in the UK. So welcome to our channel, André Escórcio Soares.
That's perfect. Thank you.
To start with, can you just tell us a little bit about how you get into the industry to start with sports psych and yes.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I didn't follow the linear path of studying psychology, knowing that I wanted to be a sports psychologist, went to a master, then becoming a sports psychologist. So my entire life, I've been linked to sports. I've practiced sports since I was, 4 or 5 years old. Practiced many different sports. Sports have always been a very big thing in my life. My father himself was a football player, then he went into a football coaching career. And interestingly enough, I've never played football, and I'm terrible with the ball on my feet. But I played many different other sports like judo, like ring hockey, which is very famous in Portugal, like more recreational volleyball and tennis and squash and paddle now. So it has always been a big thing. And at a certain point, I wanted to become a sports scientist or to study sports science back in Portugal. And then last minute, I just decided I wanted to go to become a psychologist. And firstly, I wanted to become a clinical psychologist. So I would imagine myself in a clinical setting, this clinical space, room, seeing people, and that probably romantic side of clinical psychology. After studying psychology for a while, for my undergrad, and then I decided I wanted to become an organizational psychologist. So it was not so much the clinical psychology. I went into organizational psychology. I started at a certain point. I still considered, well, should I do something around sports psychology or organizational psychology? But there was not much sports psychology in terms of masters in Portugal back, talking about 15, 20 years ago. And I just went to organizational psychology. Interestingly enough, the course director of that program is actually a sports psychologist himself. So he worked for Benfica for a long time, for more than 20 years. He set up the psychology department. So I never felt, even studying organizational psychology, I never felt very away from sports psychology. And then when I finalized, I started lecturing very early in my life. I've been lecturing for more than 16 years now in psychology, human resources, organizational psychology. And I said, well, no, I want to do something in sports. I miss sports. That's the thing for me. It's like to be in that environment. It's a way. Being a psychologist is just a way to be in that environment, really. I could have been a sports scientist. I could have been, I don't know, a coach. Well, probably not a coach. I don't think I would do a great coach, but for me, it's to be in that environment, which I feel at home. And so I started working with judo players back in Portugal before moving to the UK. When I came to the UK, I started working. I came to work at the university as a lecturer as well, and then I paused my career in sports for a while until I decided, well, I'll just do another master's, and then I did another master's in sport and exercise psychology, and then I eventually end up working in women's football, in this case with the Rugby Borough Women's, and very happy doing that, I guess.
Thank you for sharing that. So you spoke about you went to do organizational psychology. So how does that work out for you to bring that perspective into sports psych? Do you work more on an organizational perspective or one-on-one with athletes, those kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's quite interesting question. I think one of the problems that we are facing in psychology, and definitely in the UK, in some other countries you don't see that so much, but is that we are dividing psychology. Psychology is one field. The cognitions you have working in for a company are the same cognitions that you have on the pitch. So if you think about cognitions like attention, decision making, perceptual, visual perception, all those kind of cognitive elements, for example, you see them both in organizations and on the pitch. So um, in a way, I feel that we are dividing psychology
Mhm.
into too many parts sometimes, and sometimes we forget how they combine with each other and how they sometimes we are talking about the same thing in different contexts and sometimes even using different terminology. For example, interestingly enough, when I was doing my master's, I had a module I think was around leadership, or definitely had leadership there because I did the coursework in leadership, and actually I cited a paper that I published in organizational psychology. So it's like, uh, yes, they are different. There are different
Mhm.
elements. You really need to have. It's different to work in an IT company than working in a sports company, but it's the same different. It is also different to work for an IT company than working for a, let's say, I don't know, banking company. So, this said, I still think that my background in organizational psychology
Mhm.
helps me a lot. Because yes, I do a lot of work with individual players. I do a lot of work, um, um, a one-to-one work with my players, whether if it's the traditional issues that we face, like
Mhm.
self-confidence or motivation or doubts about their careers or injury. I do a lot of on
Mhm.
injury rehabilitation. I developed in our club, in my club, I developed a very structured approach to injury. So every time that player is injured for more than 4 weeks, for example, they have an initial assessment with me, something very simple, just to see where they are, if they faced this injury before, and then plan their rehabilitation from a psychological point of view, making sure that they are ready
Mhm.
when they return to play. Um, so I do still do this work, but having this background in organizational psychology allows me to have a big appreciation of issues like team culture, like team dynamics, like the culture of the team, the philosophy of the team, the values. How do we transform the team values? All the teams say that they have their own values, but how do we transform those values into specific day-to-day behaviors? And then I also think I don't think we need to be experts in the sports we are working on. But for me, it was very important to develop some working knowledge of football as well. So I can, for example, try to understand how those values, in terms of the culture that we want to have in the club, how they reflect, for example, on the pitch, or they reflect on of the pitch behaviors. So I think, yes, you're right. Organizational psychology allowed me to have that differentiated perspective. I feel that again, sometimes in the UK, and different countries have very different approaches. We focus a lot on the psychologist as the one doing one-to-one psychological skills training, and that's it. But there's so much more that we can do. Leadership development, for example, is another big thing that we can do. How do we develop our players into becoming leaders? Um, and I think at least in football, that's what clubs are asking us to do, is to creating those high performance environments that are based on values, that are based on developing a culture of performance. So yeah.
No, that's really interesting. How would you say the coaches and the members of staff within the teams that you've worked with, how they accepted that psychology side?
Well, I'm very lucky, to be honest, in my club. Actually, I'm very lucky in all clubs and all clients I worked in terms of psychology, because I never tried to sell psychology. I never applied. Well, I never worked in a job, a psychology job, for a psychology job, having applied for that job, if you know what I mean. So my first experience in judo, for example, was less like I knew the head coach, and the head coach says, "Oh, you said psychology. You said psychology. You want to work with us?" So, oh yeah, why not? With my current club, it's interesting. I'm saying this publicly now. It's the first time I'm saying this publicly, but I applied for a job as an assistant coach for the development team for our under 21s. And because again, like I said, I wanted to be involved in sports, not being HCPC qualified in the UK closes a lot of doors to me. Even if I'm considered a sports psychologist, is a title that I use in Portugal. I'm a sports psychologist in Portugal, but not here, which is quite interesting because when we recruit coaches, we don't look at that. We have for example, in football, we have the FIFA qualifications, and the FIFA qualifications are the same everywhere. So if you have a FIFA qualification in Portugal, it's fine. It's exactly what you need here, but doesn't happen with psychology. So it seems that I am a sports psychologist in Portugal, but I'm not in the UK, even being the very same person, which is quite interesting. But so I applied for this job to become an assistant manager, and they said, or assistant coach, and they said, André, we don't want you to become an assistant coach. Actually, we are not going to recruit one now, but we are very interested in your CV, and we want you to become our first team psychologist. So, well, perfect. That's even better. Thank you very much. I'll take it. So they were open to it. They were the ones that proactively looking for that. Yes, there is there's sometimes some kind of education that we need to do with coaches, with everyone within the multidisciplinary teams and different parts of the business, I call it the business because football is a business, but of the club, in showing what we can do. But to be honest, there is so much that we can do.
Yeah.
That at this point, I feel that we have to educate each other as psychologists as well on what we can do in clubs. Again, for me, it's much more than just going and teaching psychological skills or to do psychological skills training. There is so much we can do, and I sometimes feel that we are not taking the most of what psychology has to offer to clubs. So, yes, we have to educate them, but we have to educate ourselves. We have to find what else can I add to this role. But I've been very, very lucky, to be honest. They are always very open. They listen to me. I was so surprised when I started working at first was even a bit scary because I would say something and they would really take it on board. So it's like, what if this goes wrong? What's gonna happen? Because I said something and did it, and what if doesn't work? So you either have those places where you say something and people do not understand or do not apply, or you have this place where people really listen to you, and that comes with extra responsibility, I guess.
Yes, sorry. Circling back what you said earlier is just stuck in my mind right now. You said in the UK, it just classified into so many different subfield of psychology. So there are health psychology, clinical psychology, and so many different fields. Because in my training, when there's different issue that we're not familiar with, we have to just refer it out. So how does that work for you? Because obviously you are dabbling into different field already in your past. So when you work in the UK, how does that work out for you?
Yeah, no, that's actually a very good question, because at the same time I'm saying that sometimes we narrow down too much. At the same time, we need to be very conscious of the limits of our practice. I know very little. I have a basic knowledge of clinical psychology. So if I have a player that is struggling with mental health, I will have to signpost, right? So, and don't get me wrong, all those areas you find elsewhere. In Portugal, we also have sports and exercise psychology. We also have organizational psychology. We have clinical psychology. We also do have those. But those are kind of specializations. In the first place, you are a psychologist, and then you specialize in one area or in one setting. Myself, I consider myself a performance psychologist. So I work as a and this is something that you also develop over the years. It took me a while to get to my real identity, which is I'm a performance psychologist, and you have performance in many different contexts. It can be in sports. Actually, call it sport and exercise psychology, but you can have sports psychologists working in performative arts, with musicians, with actors, with dancers. They are not sports people. Why are you applying sports? Should we have performative arts psychology instead of a sports psychology? Probably not, because it's human performance. So, yes, I think that's very important, and I think that's something we have to educate people for. Is like, what are the limitations of your own limitations, or the limitations of your practice. And again, for some people, they might have a lot of limitations in terms of leadership development, for example. And that's not a limitation for me. If I have a player that is getting, again, into a lot of mental health issues, I would have to signpost. I really don't feel comfortable working with that player. In those cases, I can still work the performance, well-being, sports side, but they have to have. And I had players already that they were having counseling from one professional and then performance psychology or sports psychology sessions with me. So it is possible to do that. But that's quite important. What I'm saying is not that we shouldn't get rid of all test qualifications. It's just, how do we make sure that the profession adapts to different circumstances? You have brilliant sports psychologists working in organizations. They don't call themselves organizational psychologists, but they work with businesses, and they are brilliant doing that. Why shouldn't they? They know about performance. They know about teams. They know about performance cultures. They know about cognitive aspects of performance. Why not having them working in organizations? I just feel that sometimes we need to start from a psychology point of view. We are psychologists, and then move into, okay, what are the areas where I want to specialize? And again, I'm not saying that Portugal is right or the other countries are right. Okay, so there are both good things in. I would bring stuff from different countries and create the perfect system, but that's not going to happen. So yeah.
You do often see people start off with just core psychology, and then once they've figured it out, then they'll specialize.
Yeah. I mean, in psychology, you even have people in sports psychology. You even have people that come from a sports science background, right? And that's fair enough. They have not studied. I'm not sure about you guys, but I didn't study sports science at university. I always studied psychology. But you have people that studied sports science first degree, and then they did a qualification they did a master, eventually a master in sport and exercise psychology, and then they did the SEPA from the Chartered Association of Sport and Exercise Science. So yes, I think that you can come from different areas. It's not that you have to have studied psychology all your life, I guess.
And that's one of the good things about it. It's not just one or two routes. You can have a variety of different ways of becoming a qualified sports psych, or even call yourself a performance psych. There's lots of options.
Yeah, absolutely. What I think is that we should have more options even. Again, and I'm saying this because I want to be provocative, because I like to be provocative, but I'm totally conscious of the challenges, and I'm totally conscious that what we do is it is something very serious. It is something that has an impact on people. We are working with people. We are working with humans, so we need to be very cautious. But yeah, I think we could learn a lot more from each other, from other areas. Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm curious to learn about how is the process right now for you to apply to become sports psych in the UK, or are you in the process of doing so right now?
Yeah, probably for me, the more logical way would be so the HCPC as an international route recognition, and probably that's what I will end up by doing at a certain point. You just go to HCPC and say, these are my qualifications in Portugal. I'm a qualified sports psychologist, sport and exercise psychologist in Portugal. Do you recognize this, or do you require me to do any extra? I just feel, or I could go for stage 2 or for a doctorate. I just feel that at this point I said it undergrad, I did 2 masters, I did a PhD, and I did a PG cert. It's like, it's not that I don't like to study, I really like to study, but how is that what I need to become qualified? That's what I mean. I have the experience as well. It's like, is that what I need? Is it to carry on doing my work that I've been doing for, I don't know, last 15 years or whatever, but call it an internship, and suddenly I'm becoming an intern? Is that what we are supposed? I don't know. Probably myself, I'll go just for the international route, but it is not easy. It is not easy. And again, go to Premier League, and sorry to focus so much on football, it's just the sport I work, but perhaps you see this in other sports as well. But go to Premier League and see how many coaches are from abroad. How many managers in
all of them.
Most of them. I don't have a number, but I can imagine that are certainly more than an half of them. And then go and see how many psychologists are coming from a different country. I never met anyone working in sports psychology in this country that would come from a qualification in a different country. I'm not saying that there are no such professions. I've never met one, and through some networks and everything, I know a lot of people working in psychology in this country, but you don't see that happening. And I think it's a shame, because we learn from others, isn't it? That's why I moved abroad, is because I wanted to learn from different people and from a different culture.
And I mean, if you do go down that route and become HCPC qualified, then a lot of those barriers will be lifted for you, because certain jobs do require that title. Especially, I think that's the biggest barrier for trainees, because even though we've done the studies and the certain qualifications, we still need that extra bit of experience before we can go for certain roles.
Absolutely. And I'm involved with BPS. I'm a member of the executive committee of the Division of Occupational Psychology. I'm someone that is actively involved with this professional body. But I'm also very critical about the way we qualify people, and I think we definitely should review that, because I don't feel and this is not sports psychology specifically, it's many different areas of psychology. I don't think it's a very inclusive profession, because it's not everyone that can spend extra money for a qualification plus supervision plus working for free, because most of trainees work for free, don't they? So I don't think it is everyone that can do this. Is it even good for the area to live, to not include people that would be great at really talented professionals? And I'm a lecturer in psychology, so I've had students coming to me saying, oh, I have this dream of becoming an educational psychologist. I have this dream of becoming a sports psychologist, but I simply cannot afford it. I cannot afford to not work. I cannot afford to work for free. I cannot afford to pay those fees, because while you are studying, you still have student loans and everything, but you don't have those when you are doing either a stage 2 with BPS or SPAR or a doctorate. You don't have that funding. So a lot of people actually cannot afford it, and this is a shame, because I think we are losing a lot of talented people.
It is definitely a controversial topic, because it is definitely not a cheap title to get. There's a lot of money to pay the registration, and then to pay the supervisor, etc. And so there are quite a lot of people outside, they just call themselves sports psychology coach, but essentially they work, and the work they're doing is quite similar, but they're not regulated under any professional body. So there are quite a lot of issues out there, because they're also not under any supervision, so their work may also not up to the standard, but then they also create a lot of controversy around it. So what are your thoughts around?
No, I agree, and I think that's a big issue, isn't it? Because that's, if you ask me, I would rather prefer a world where qualifications would be accessible and we would have everyone qualified, because qualification is a kind of it's about guaranteeing minimum standards, if you want, and we want that, don't we? Again, we work with people. It's serious work. We don't want to be treated by a medical doctor that is not really a medical doctor, do you? So why would you want to have that from a psychologist? So yes, that is a big risk that happens in sports psychology. We have a lot of mental performance coaches, and it's interesting because in the past I had organizations saying that coming to me saying, well, we want to do a contract with you, we will, and then they send me the contract, and then the contract says mental performance coach. I said, no, I'm not a mental performance coach. I'm a psychologist. Okay, you cannot call me sports psychologist, but at least call me performance psychologist, because I did study well, I've been studying psychology for 20 years now, so I'm a psychologist, really. Yes, I cannot use the title in this country again because I was a sports psychologist in Portugal. It's interestingly enough, I'm a qualified occupational psychologist here in the UK, and not a sport and exercise psychology. If I go to Portugal, and they don't have a qualification, they have specializations. So it's something that is relatively new, so I'll just apply. But I'm closer to have a specialization in sports psychology in Portugal than occupational psychology. So I'm the very same person, but in one country I'm more recognized as a sports psychologist from a accreditation point of view, from a qualification point of view, and in another country more like a sport and exercise psychologist. Like I'm the same person, isn't it? But yeah, but again, it is difficult because there are no perfect systems. But in an area like sports, where you literally have people from all around the world, I think we were talking when we were off about knowing different languages, knowing about Portuguese and Spanish. I can understand Spanish and I speak fluently Portuguese. I think it's quite good to work in contexts like Premier League, where you have a lot of players that come from countries where they speak these languages. But yeah, again, it is a difficult one, and I don't have an easy solution or an easy answer for that. It's just, yes, ideal world, I would want to have everyone qualified, and I would not want anyone without the proper qualification or the proper knowledge or the proper skills or the proper ethical standards working in this context, because it is serious again.
So how
Yeah,
is it
that's a
like
really
in
good
Europe?
point.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so how is it like in Europe? So you are qualified in Portugal, but what about the rest of the country that you work in?
I don't work as a practitioner in other countries. I know that I can tell you how it is in Portugal. For example, in Portugal, it's quite interesting because you qualify as a psychologist, and to qualify as a psychologist, you have to do the similar thing to become qualified in one area here. So I do undergrad, then you do a master, and then you do an internship for the professional body. But when you finish that, you get access to the title of psychologist. The title that is protected in Portugal is the title psychologist, which is not a protected title in the UK. So in the UK, you can call yourself psychologist, no matter what. You can be an engineer and say, well, I'm a psychologist. It's not a protected title. The protected titles are clinical psychology, forensic psychologist, health psychologist, sport and exercise psychologist, and occupational psychologist. And I don't think I'm forgetting any of them. These are the protected titles. These are the titles that you cannot use if you are not qualified. But you can call yourself performance psychologist, you can call yourself psychologist, you can call yourself business psychologist, marketing psychologist, economics psychologist, whatever you want, because the psychologist title is not protected. So in Portugal, the psychologist title is protected, so you have get a qualification, and then what you can do is to do a specialization instead of a qualification. They use a systems point where you have to get different points in different areas, and this includes education, this includes supervision, this includes supervised work, this includes publications in the area, this includes being involved in bodies that are related with the area, conferences, presentations in conferences, writing books. What else? Professional experience, having experience working in that area. So they have these system points. So you have a minimum of points that you need for each of the components. As soon as you get those points, you apply and you get that. But you can be working while you're doing that, and you are working. I don't see many people there starting working as a psychologist or starting saying, "Oh no, I'm not gonna work now. I'm going to focus on specialization, so I'm doing voluntary work to get that specialization." No. Start working in a context, start working in sports. After a while, you start getting all those experiences and everything. And then when you have those points, you apply for the specialization, you become specialized. So yeah, that's the main difference. It's quite interesting because I've heard someone talking about the system in Australia, for example. It's quite interesting because if we go with qualification in the UK, if you go to Australia, you cannot work you are not a qualified sports psychologist. And basically what you have to do is a lot of clinical work. Because clinical work for them, or clinical psychology, clinical work is really the basis for the profession. So it really depends on the countries. and yeah, perhaps, I don't know, perhaps international sports bodies should have specific qualifications, football psychology qualification for FIFA, for example. I don't know, probably that could solve the issue. And then yeah, everyone had to the same standards in that specific sport.
Yeah, just as Casey's, I don't know if it's 10, 15 years that they've had the CPAR route, but I'm sure there will be many more routes emerging in the years to come. So if we just backtrack a little bit, how would you say your transition was when you first started in the UK? Did you have a job lined up, or was it sort of when you got here, you were just applying?
No, I came here to work for Coventry University. So I came here because I found a job in academia. I was already an academic there. I was already a lecturer in Portugal. I just applied for a job here. I got a job here. And that's when I left. And that's when I left that job with those judo players in Portugal. And that, interestingly enough, that reminds me something else. Is like it's what kind of things you value also on the profession of, or the meaning of what is to be a sports psychologist is different for different people. I'm pretty sure the role I have in my club is pretty different from the job other psychologists have in other clubs, even within my league. There is not one thing that this is the job of a sports psychologist. This all the tasks. It really changes and depends. And for me, one of the things that I think it helps me a lot is to understand sport. And then in Portugal, before I came here, I was working with judo players in a club, but then I was working for a regional association. Like in football, you have the different county associations. It would be the same equivalent to judo in Portugal. So I was working to that organization. So I was in charge of leadership and not leadership, sorry, to the training and development department. So I was in charge of overseeing budget and developing other actors, and that helped me again understanding the sports, understanding. I've already been a player myself, so all those kind of things. Again, you don't have to be a full expert. I no way I could coach a football team. I'm not an expert in football, but understanding the sport, I think it's important. Yeah. So, but that was my transition. That was my transition. When I come as a lecturer, interestingly enough, in a business school in human resources management. And then I felt, no, I'm a psychologist. I need to have psychology in my title. And then I went to the School of Psychology, more like in organizational psychology.
Nice. And it's sort of like speaking the language as well, because I've recently started in a new school and it's like all these terms. I'm like, okay, I need to start changing the type of language around them and figuring out what their short-term slang is, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was the two things. It is definitely the slang and everything, and the different language in my mother tongue. Because some terminology that I knew in football in Portugal, I didn't know here, the translation. But you know what? Now, if I go to Portugal, I don't know a lot of the names and the slang and everything in Portuguese, which is quite, but absolutely. And it's not just technical terms, it's the changing room language, really. It's a changing, people speak differently. People in sports speak differently, like people at the university speak different, like people in business speak different. There is different languages, absolutely. I felt exactly the same. Again, not being my mother tongue, it's even more complicated. Oh, it was. Now it's definitely more comfortable. But yeah, absolutely.
So how different is it, the way you work in Portugal and when you work in UK with the women's football team?
So in Portugal, I only worked with an academy, and it was as an external consultant. So basically, what they do, it was really, it was more like a management kind of thing. It was not so much hands-on in terms of contact with players and coaches. So basically, what they do in Portugal is, well, they do the same here. The academies have different ratings, right? 1 star, 2 stars. They do stars. They're 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars. In here, I think it's levels: level 1, level 2, level 3 academies. And this academy wanted to be 3 stars, I think it was. But to be 3 stars, they had to have a plan for. They don't even call it psychological; they call it psychosocial development plan. So it's so in the UK we have. So the Football Association in England, not in the UK, sorry, in England, the Football Association has 4 corners: physical, technical, social, and psychological. Basically, in Portugal, the psychological and the social come together in one. So you have to have a plan to develop this, and what are the skills you want to develop at each level. So I basically developed that plan, sent to them, and it's up to them to apply. I use a lot what's the name of that model? Oh gosh, I forgot now the model. Um, is it the 5D model? Have you come along that one?
5C. Is it
5C,
5C?
yeah, that's one, yeah. So yeah, it is communication, confidence, and 3 more. I don't remember now. So I used a lot of that to inform that, because I knew that that's a model that can be easily used by coaches. So basically what I did with them was to define the strategy, to define the plan. So this is the kind of things we want a football play from a psychological point of view. We want a football play from this academy to have, and this is the things you can train. The model says that you train almost all the different dimensions at all ages, but in different ways. But actually, then the Portuguese Association come back saying, no, we want specific for each age. For example, so I had to adapt a plan to each age group. So that's what I did with them. So and that's the only experience that I have in football there. That experience was in judo. That it is so different, and when you move from one sport to another, you see that it is so. For me, it was so weird moving into football, because in judo, basically, what happens is that you plan the season, and you want the players to peak in 2-3 months of the season, right? So we say, so in this case, we would start the season in September, and we wanted them to pick in April. That's when they have their nationals, and then May, June, when they have international competitions, European Cups, and those kind of things. So that's what we wanted them to pick. They would still compete other months, but we would plan the season for them to pick that, which gives me a lot of time to work a lot of things from a psychological point of view, saying I have all this time to get them ready for that moment. But at the same time, it's that moment. It's all or nothing. In football, they have to pick every single week. So suddenly I don't have time. I do have the preseason, but then every week I have something new to work on, and sometimes things come and you have to solve them in just a couple of weeks or 1 week or something, because you cannot say, oh no, that's fine. We will wait a few games. You can't afford that. So it is quite interesting when we move from one sport to another.
I remember early on, like being an undergrad, you kind of think being a psychologist requires the same role and the same things that you do in each club. But like by season, I've worked with this team just over a year now, and it's like month by month is different. And then if you're changing teams as well at different levels, you need to be ready to actually approach things differently.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, that's quite interesting. I was talking the other day with a very experienced psychologist. I'm not going to say name because I don't want to put her on the spotlight now, but someone very famous in this country. And she was telling me that exactly that. It's like sometimes the way we qualify psychologists, we make things seem very simple. Oh, you go there, you do this, and it's always the same things. We always like, again, psychological skills training. I'm not saying it is not important. I do use them a lot in one-to-ones and everything. But we overemphasize that. It seems that a lot is about that. I remember teaching a module on undergrad was applied sports psychology. Most of the module was each week you would go for one of the canon psychological skills. It's like, yes, what about all other things? One of the things I'm working a lot now, it's about cognitive psychology. It's about assessing and developing, and it, at a certain point even requires me to be on the pitch delivering drills that allow them to develop those cognitive skills. You're right. Well, for some others, it's just delivering workshops in a classroom. And yes, it's really I'm really glad that you share with that question with me that it's not always the same, and we have to keep learning. We have to keep adapting because we have to respond to whatever the environment asks from us.
So how well do you know we need to know the sport before we work in the sport? So for
Again,
you used to be an athlete yourself, so you know very well of the sports.
yeah.
But yeah.
Again, it really depends on the role you have. For me, when they recruited me to this, or contracted me, or made me an offer to get to this position, I told them one thing: is like, yes, I'm gonna work with you, but I want to be a member of the team. I'm a member of the staff team, and I'm a member of this team. I want to be involved. So I'm involved in most of the things that happen at the staff level, at the club level. I am involved. Do I need to attend all the games? In theory, I don't, but I make an effort to attend at least 50% of the games because I'm not doing much on the bus or organized stuff, but I'm still there. I'm showing myself, and I know that some colleagues talk about, yes, if I'm in training, quite often I'm not taking notes. I have trainings every single week. I'm not always taking notes. Sometimes I have to take notes because there's something that is important. But quite often it's like having a coach saying, "Oh, André, can you bring the cones and put the cones there?" And I'll do that because I'm a part of that system, and that's how I like to be, and that's how I see my intervention to be maximized. Some others, for example, rather prefer to have different clients and work with different sports, different people. It really depends on what type of psychologist you want to be. And again, I don't think there is one that is better than the other. I feel more comfortable with this. This is what I want to do as a psychologist. But yeah, but it requires me, like I said, to adapt a lot more to the things.
Mhm.
And sometimes most of the times I understand why people want to be a consultant, because to be in a club, it is difficult. It is
Very demanding.
demanding. It is a lot of pressure. You have days that you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And then on the next day, you're saying, oh, I'm so good. I'm doing this so well. Everything's going so well. It is difficult, but it's not any easier for other members of staff. For example, one of the things I do a lot in my club is to make sure I look after staff as well. If you know what I mean. And it's quite interesting because that's becoming embedded in the culture. For example, before we did a small break for Christmas, and I usually give them strategies to recover from a psychological point of view. Simple things like connect with family and friends, make sure you do an activity that you like, make sure you go away. We have players that live in the same house. I tell them, make sure that you go away from that house, you go back to your families, take some away. I do this. And it's quite interesting. The last time I always send a text message. We have a WhatsApp group. I send a text message giving those instructions. And actually the manager just forward that message to the staff saying, this also applies to the staff. So, and those are those moments that feel, oh, I'm proud. I'm proud that there is something here. I'm proud that they got that message. They got the message that the staff also have to take care of themselves, because it is very difficult to be in a club.
Yeah.
But it's, if you like high performance, that's it's very enjoyable at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. That's a key message. We get in it, we get involved because we enjoy it first and foremost. It's the same with athletes. When you ask them why did they start getting involved, it's because they love the sport. So coming up to the end now, what would you say after all your years of experience? What wisdom and what advice would you say to others?
Trainee or someone want to get into the industry.
Be open to learn. Learn is the most important thing. Be open. Be open to new approaches. Be open to learn. Think that no matter how much experience the psychologist is, they will have sometimes the very same doubts that you guys have, and it's quite often very lonely profession. It's not, you'll never get to a position, or hopefully you will never get to a position where you feel, I know everything, and now I just have to do it. It's constant learning, I guess.
Thank you very much, Andre. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. All the best for you.